Alright, so we finally got episode 6, but the Chosen seem to get some things wrong. It's kind of a handful, so let's talk about it. Welcome to The Snipe Life, where we look at creativity through the lens of Christianity, and mostly The Chosen nowadays. But today we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 6 of The Chosen, which just released. This episode was really good. I loved a lot of the parts in this episode, and seeing Mary's redemption was another really cool moment. We're not going to talk about that today, so make sure you're subscribed so that you can see that episode when it comes out. As always with The Chosen, they do a great job of kind of tying different stories together, especially ones that are already tied together within Scripture itself. So it'll be really cool to see that. So let's go back in time and see David before he was king, eating some holy bread.
5 days.
He will heal. He always does.
And what if our oldest son doesn't heal?
That is why I must teach a Beadar how to make the showbread today.
Our family share in the secret traditions of Aaron's priestly lineage will be damaged
Yes,
otherwise.
Yafa. I'm aware.
It's yet one more in a never-ending string of curses.
You always thinking in catastrophes.
And you, always thinking it's another sunny day.
Send for the boy. 12 cakes. One for each of the tribes of Israel.
But if the bread is still here, why didn't God eat it, Abba?
God doesn't need food. It's called the bread of the presence because it's a reminder of his presence in our lives. A symbol that he sits at our table, dwells in our midst.
What happens to the old bread?
In the law of Moses, it was written that Aaron and his son shall eat it in a holy place, since it is for him the most holy portion of Adonai's food offerings, a perpetual due.
I always wonder what you and Saba want every Shabbat.
Yes, we come here to eat the bread that has been removed, provided neither of us had lain with his wife that morning.
Don't you lay with him every night, Abba?
That is a discussion for another time. But for now, we must replace this with the hot bread as an offering to Adonai. Reuben,
Simeon,
Levi,
Judah.
Himalek.
Abiathar, go home. Tell your mother I sent you and that everything's going to be fine.
Listen,
Why are you alone? Where is your protection?
the king has sent me on a mission and said that no one is to know anything about it. I've arranged to meet my men at a certain place.
David, it's my understanding, you and the king are not on friendly terms.
I've been sent on a mission from the king. Please, I haven't eaten in days, and I know my men haven't either. They're in hiding. We could make do with 5 loaves of bread, anything.
I have no ordinary bread.
What about that? That was replaced by the hot
But
bread.
it's still holy bread. You know the law, Moses.
And I know the pikuach nefesh.
Have the men kept themselves from women?
Truly they have. And always. They've been in hiding at Gibeah, waiting for me for days.
We must be quick. So remember, what I'm about to give you is sacred.
Life is more sacred than bread.
If Zol finds out I helped you, I won't get to keep mine.
I know.
And I'm not sorry. Something is going to come through you. I can feel it. Something bigger, more exciting. I don't know what.
There was nothing bigger or more exciting than that giant.
We'll see.
Alright, so right off the bat, we see this scene with David and Ahimelech. Now, this scene is from 1 Samuel, and we have some interesting things that we want to talk about here. So, as always during these episodes, I want to remind you guys that The Chosen is not Scripture. So even when it's replaying some of these scenes that we see in Scripture, some things are going to be different. Some timing is going to be different. We're going to see that a lot in this episode. So while most of these scenes are based in some sort of Scripture, and more so than a lot of the other episodes of The Chosen, a lot of this is not directly from Scripture, and some of the things are slightly different than Scripture. So let's talk about that, because we want to be really clear about what Scripture is and what The Chosen is trying to say. So like I said, this is from 1 Samuel 21, and David is here talking to the priest Ahimelech. David goes and he meets Ahimelech, and Ahimelech comes to him and says, you know, where's your protection? Where are your people? Why are you alone? And remember, Ahimelech is scared at this point because Saul is after David to kill him. And this in scripture is right after Jonathan has just warned David basically to leave. So David basically tells Ahimelech, God has given me this mission, right, to go and basically run away from Saul and to hide for now. But David needs help from a few different people. He has his own kind of little army that comes with him of young men that he meets in the wilderness, but he also just needs food at this moment. And so Ahimelech has all of this food, but lawfully, he's not really allowed to give it to anybody else. Only the priests are allowed to eat it, and during only a certain time. So David continues talking to Ahimelech, and he basically says, I can take that bread right there. And Ahimelech says, well, I don't have any regular bread. I only have this holy bread. And then he starts to go through a few different steps of seeing if, his men would be even worthy of eating this bread to begin with. Have they slept with any women or anything like that? And David assures him, obviously not. They've been in the wilderness apart from women for a while, so they're holy on normal circumstances, even regular journeys. They'd be even more holy during this time, obviously. And so as we see this play out, why do they play this scene at the beginning of the episode? Well, it's going to be really important later at the end of this episode. Like The Chosen always does, they kind of tie things together from beginning to end. The episodes are coherent and they're all packaged together, and the seasons as well. Normally where a season starts, it kind of ends in a similar fashion to kind of meld everything together. Although one thing that I wish they had put in this scene was at the end of the story, Ahimelech actually gives David Goliath's sword. It had been in this holy place, basically wrapped in a cloth, kept as some sort of holy artifact. But as David is leaving, Ahimelech asks him, hey, do you have any weapons? Do you need anything? And David says no. And so Ahimelech says, well, take this sword. It's Goliath's. You slayed Goliath, and, you can have this sword, basically. It's the same sword that David beheaded Goliath with back in that story. And so selfishly, I wanted to see David as he carried out Goliath's sword. I thought that would have been an amazing end to that scene. So now we're going to skip to almost the end of the episode, where Jesus walks into a synagogue and heals the man with a withered hand. This is an important scene as well, although they do get some things maybe wrong here. So let's talk about it.
No one born of a forbidden union may enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of his descendants may enter the assembly of the Lord. No Ammonite or Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord. Even to the 10th generation, none of them may enter the assembly of the Lord forever. Because they did not meet you with bread and with water on the way.
Shalom.
Even to the 10th generation, none of them may enter the assembly of the Lord forever.
May I see?
Because they did not meet you with bread and with what? Excuse me, what are you doing?
What is your name?
Elam.
Your friend Elam has a withered hand.
Are you a healer?
It is not lawful to heal on Sabbath.
Which one of you who has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath will not take hold of it and lift it out?
Who are you to speak to our congregation in such a
Of
way?
how much more value is this man than a sheep?
Stop this at once.
Come here. Come stand here. It's okay.
Elam, sit down. We don't know this person. He could be a shaman.
Is it lawful on Sabbath to do good or to do harm? To save life or to kill?
This affliction does not threaten his life.
It does not even affect his health.
Lift it up. Stretch it out. Feels good, huh?
If he was supposed to be healed, God would have done it himself.
Interesting point.
Get out.
Gladly.
Blasphemer!
What is wrong with you?
Apparently everything.
Wait! Come back!
So this scene is really interesting. I love the way that they portrayed Jesus here, and at first I was like, maybe he's a little bit too aggressive. But reading in scripture, it actually specifically says that Jesus was angry during this scene. But there are a few things here that the Chosen actually, I think, got wrong, or they decided to ignore it, either way. So this story is from a couple different places in scripture, one being Mark 3 and the other being Luke 6. So in Mark 3, it talks about how Jesus healed a man with a withered hand. But in Luke 6, it's actually more clear, and it clarifies that the man's withered hand was his right hand. So the Chosen may have just ignored this, or maybe it was just an oversight when they were worrying about so many other things with this production. Because we can clearly see that the man's left hand was healed here, not his right. Not that big of a deal, but I did want to point it out. Now in scripture, this scene reads a little bit differently than we saw it on screen. At least to me it does. So in the show, we kind of see as Jesus comes in, and the Pharisees immediately kind of object to his presence, object to him healing this man, and object to everything that he's saying. However, in scripture, it reads more like this to me, that Jesus came in and he began to heal the man. And as the Pharisees saw what was happening, they allowed it to continue because they almost wanted to trap him in seeing what he would do on this day, on the Sabbath. And even as Jesus is speaking all of these things to them, which he does in scripture, they don't say anything back to him. It specifically says that they are silent. And I think that this is important to the scene because this is when Jesus begins to get angry. He sees their hardness of heart and how they're trying to entrap him in this moment. But instead of yelling at them or whipping them like he does in another case, he basically heals the man right in front of them. And he asks them, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to kill? And in this scene, as they kind of retort back to him, in the real scripture, they don't say anything. And Jesus begins to get angry and fed up with their hardness of heart. And then he tells the man, stretch out your hand. And that's when he heals him. So, while not Bible breaking, it is slightly different to me in scripture than it is in this scene. This may be the first scene that I've seen kind of taken this far out of context. But, again, The Chosen is just a show. It's not scripture. We need to be studying the scripture so that we understand that as we walk through this whole Chosen journey. Now, the next scene that we're watching actually comes before this in scripture, and it's on a completely separate day. But again, The Chosen has given us the disclaimer that they're going to switch around timelines. They're going to switch around different contexts in order to fit a better story for television. So, let's watch the scene where Jesus declares that he is Lord, even over the Sabbath.
Are they going to send the town guards after us?
I think those guys are the town guards.
Alright, so for those of you who didn't see, first he interrupted the reading simply by standing next to this guy with a paralyzed hand. Then the priest. What?
Reaping or harvesting on Shabbat.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I've been so hungry I forgot what day it is.
You may.
No, get back. Please. Out of the way. You have made a mockery of our little synagogue and of Torah. You will tell us your name, your lineage, your virtue, and now your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath.
Have you not read what David did when he was in need and was hungry? He entered the house of God in a time of Ahimelech, the priest, and ate the bread of the presence, which was not lawful for him to eat, but only for the priests.
You would compare yourself to David. It was an emergency.
Or have you not read in the law how on Shabbat the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath, but are guiltless?
That's for Levites. Are you a Levite of priestly lineage?
Listen carefully. Something greater than the temple is here. And if you had known what this means, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So, the Son of Man, is Lord, even of the Sabbath.
The Son of Man.
Let's go.
That title, Son of Man, seems to upset a lot of people. Why? Tell you later.
Now here we see as the disciples and Jesus are leaving Jericho, leaving that synagogue, and you can see as Jesus is still a little bit amped up. Peter, the always leader that he is, steps up and begins to describe what just happened to the rest of the group, just in case they didn't see it. And as he does, he grabs a handful of grain and begins to eat it. Now, why is this a big deal? Remember, this is the Sabbath, and there are a lot of rules for the Sabbath. I mean, even in Israel today, if you try to press a button on an elevator on the Sabbath, you can't. Elevators just go up each floor and they stop at each floor because they don't want people pressing buttons because that's considered some sort of work on the Sabbath. So, just as Philip says, you're not allowed to harvest any grain or seed. It's not allowed on the Sabbath. But Peter, in his moment of excitement, just grabs the grain and begins to eat it. And the rest of the group knows what's happening, and so they stop in their tracks. Peter then realizes what he did, and he spits out the food, and he apologizes to Jesus, expecting to get scolded, expecting to get rebuked. But Jesus instead invites them, go ahead. It's fine. Again, from my point of view, the Pharisees are always trying to trap Jesus because they believe that he's a false teacher, and they believe that what he's doing is wrong. They believe they're really doing the right thing by trying to trap him in these different things. And so they see as all of Jesus' disciples are doing something that they believe is illegal on the Sabbath. And just like in the show, they ask Jesus, why are they doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath? And then at the end of the episode, we see the tie-in between David at the beginning and now the Son of Man here. David, in a moment of emergency, has asked for this bread, this holy bread, this rule to be broken so that him and his men can eat, survive, and eventually so that he can become king. And then again here, we see as this grain is being offered to the disciples, those that are running out of food, as we see earlier in the episode. And obviously, the Son of Man has power to tell them that they can do that. Although a small side note, in Scripture, Jesus doesn't actually tell them, go ahead and eat. They're just doing it. We also see a slight time warp here because in Luke, it specifically says that these two different events are on different Sabbaths, although I'm not sure how much that actually matters for the story. The biggest part of these scenes is that Jesus is now openly admitting that he considers himself the Son of Man. And now from a Pharisee's point of view, they're seeing this as complete heresy. They don't see him as the Messiah at all. He doesn't look like the Messiah that they thought that he would. And so from their point of view, they're seeing this heretic come in and admit that he believes that he's the Son of Man. And now they have to do something about it. And so just like through the rest of season 2, we see this building up of Pharisees wanting to take down Jesus and trying to make their case with the higher members of the Sanhedrin and the Pharisees and the Sadducees. I'm sure we'll talk about that in another episode when we're talking about the Pharisees, Shemuel, and Yanni, and all of that. So make sure you're subscribed so you can see that when it comes up. All in all, this episode was amazing. And these scenes were really amazing. Even though there's some things that I wish they had done differently or that I see slightly differently in Scripture, that's okay, because the show is still doing an amazing work. We've been seeing people come to Christ. We've been seeing Christians get reignited in their faith. And I love that. It's an amazing, amazing thing to see creativity like this in such high order. If you like this video, please like it. And if you really want to help us out and help this channel to grow, you can join these people right over here. These are our Patreon family, and they've been amazing to help us every single month to get new gear and to just help us grow as a channel. The link is in the description as always if you want to join them, and there's a bunch of other stuff in the description too, so make sure you check that out. I hope you like this video, and thanks for being part of our community. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.